Hey guys, I'm really excited to make this video today. I am going to be talking about my coming out story. My story is nothing exceptional or extraordinary, but from my own experience, I found a lot of comfort in hearing other people's experiences and relating because it made me feel less alone in a time where I really did feel super alone and isolated. I guess let's get started. Okay, I've really never spoken about this in depth before, so I'm really don't know what I'm gonna say or where this is gonna lead, but let's give it a go. So let's start in primary school because I think that's a good starting point because it's really the first time where I can actually remember things. I remember at that time being really like myself. I had interests that were definitely different to a lot of the boys in my class. I was obsessed with High School Musical. I was obsessed with the sound of music. I loved singing and dancing and performing and didn't really take to football and sports like everyone else did in my class. It wasn't such a thing that I was super aware of, but there was definitely something in my head that told me, you are different to everyone else in your class. So I'm gonna tell a story now because this was a really pivotal point for me where I remember things changing quite a lot. So in year six, we always did a school play and you would audition in front of the whole year group. So I sang in front of 90 kids in my year. And I remember after the performance, I was like in the playground, it was break time. My friend comes up to me and she goes, "So some of the boys, they're saying you're gay." They were all laughing about it and saying that you're gay. And I remember being devastated. I remember I was so happy after my audition. In that moment, like any excitement or happiness I had as like 11-year-old, 10-year-old was completely like taken away because I was being ridiculed for being myself and doing what I loved. And I remember just crying my eyes out. I think it was at that point for the first time in my life where something switched in my head and I wasn't gonna be as comfortable going forward of just being who I was. Something was gonna have to change. Secondary school was tough for me mentally and like internally. I began to really struggle. I started to go through puberty. I started to have feelings that I couldn't exactly ignore. It was weird because at that time, boys my age, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, were talking about, all of these new like sexual feelings that they were having for the first time. And it was such an exciting moment and such a fun thing for them to talk about, talking about girls, while these new feelings were giving people real excitement about like what was ahead and in the future. My feelings were incredibly stressful because I started to really realize I'm attracted to guys, but I was in such a state of distress about it. I remember when I would have like attraction to some of the boys in my year, I felt so ashamed of it. When I would see them in person, if I'd thought about them, I would look at them and I would feel so ashamed and like I'd done them dirty. Like I'd really betrayed camaraderie that we had as friends because I thought of them in that way. And it really made me feel super negatively towards myself. No one was speaking about it. Like this was in 2013, 14, 15. I saw nothing online. All I knew about gay people was that it was weird, that it was wrong, that gay people were the butt of the joke. That's what I learned very quickly going into secondary school, that if you're gay, you shouldn't be. I decided that I am going to be straight and no one is going to convince me otherwise. So that's what I did. I completely ignored these feelings. I didn't deal with them at all. I think the only way that I was able to survive it and get through it was complete denial. I became really skilled at convincing myself there was nothing to address, there was nothing to think about. I just wasn't willing to accept it because I was too scared of what might happen if I did. If there was ever any suspicion of me being gay, I would hear from friends, or someone would say it to me, and it happened a few times. It would be like a siren would go off in my head. It would be so incredibly stressful, and I would have to damage control, and I would have to figure out how to avoid any allegations like that in the future. So, I mean, I went through a whole host of things that I did. Number one was I would talk about girls, like how hot I thought girls were. I would make sure I wouldn't shy away from those conversations because I felt that if I shied away from those conversations, it would be suspicious. So I made sure to, contribute, and that was number one. Number two, I was very, very careful about my mannerisms and how I would act and how I would speak and how I would sit. So I would actually sit in class sometimes, I remember, watch other boys who I thought were who I wanted to be like. And I would watch how they would, sit with their legs, and how they would sit on their desk, and how they would speak and act and move. And I would try and mirror it. I remember moving my legs in the exact same position as a friend who I would look across the classroom was sitting, because I thought that they looked pretty straight and masculine. So I would mirror how they would act. And I did that for so long. I really studied people around me to make sure that I acted exactly like they were. And by the time I finished secondary school and finished sixth form and was heading to uni, I really had it down. The thing was that I focused on adopting these mannerisms for such a long time, but they just, at this point, I feel had become second nature to me, and they were just who I was. I was just editing that video and looking back and realising that, wow, I just spoke for a really fucking long time. So what I think is best is if I split this video up into two parts. So I've kind of spoken about the build up to university, and then uni is kind of when everything kind of came to blows and I actually ended up coming out, and then dealt with the after effects of that. So I'm thinking that will be part two. So if that sounds good, comment, like, subscribe, stay tuned for the next part. But yeah, I hope that was interesting, informative, helpful, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, if you liked it, if you thought it was a good video and you have any sort of thoughts or experiences that you relate to, would love to hear about that down below. So comment, and we can get chatting. I'll see you guys in the next video.